Hello, my name is Sarah Butcher, and today I'd like to talk to you about how we have been designing autism into the buildings at Priors Court. I'd like to briefly give you an overview of what we're going to look into today. We're going to talk about autism and a brief introduction to myself and to Priors Court, and then we're going to look at some of our residential buildings, particularly the Seasons, and how we've addressed some of the challenges of autism in this award-winning building, and then briefly look at the Health and Wellbeing Hub, which we have just designed and opened very recently. So firstly, a brief introduction to me. Hi, I'm Sarah Butcher. I'm lucky enough to have spent the last 30 years in autism, learning disabilities and residential social work. I work with colleagues from North Carolina as an advanced consultant trainer in the TEACH methodology, and along with colleagues at Priors Court, developed our specialist approach, which is called the Prior approach, which looks at how we can best work with young people most seriously affected by their autism. And a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to be honoured by Her Majesty the Queen and received an MBE for my services to children and young people with autism and special educational needs. So what is autism? I think before we think about how we design autism into buildings, we need to have an understanding of autism. It is a lifelong neurological developmental disorder. And at its heart, it affects how people communicate and interact with others and how they experience the world around them. In the UK, current research would suggest maybe 1 in 100 people are affected by autism, but internationally that figure can be seen as low as 1 in 68, 1 in 58, and more recently, coming out of research in California, 1 in 45 young people will be affected by autism. So it is a growing condition and we are getting better at recognising it, but it is on the increase. So what can we know about autism? Well, we know it affects everybody differently, but if we were to take one main theory in autism, it might be the triad of impairment. So it's a number of years old now, but it is probably the most widely accepted theory that to have autism, you must have a difficulty in communication, social interaction, and flexibility of thought. So, liking routine and repetitive functions and thought processes, and finding change and uncertainty very difficult. It would be hard to talk about autism without talking about sensory difficulties, and I think sensory challenges are one of the main functions that we see associated with autism. So people will not only have a difficulty with communication and social interaction, but they will have a difficulty with environmental factors, noise, smells, light, sight, sounds, all of those sorts of things will impact the autism brain. Now, very importantly, it is a spectrum condition. So we go from very severe autism, those people that would have a very severe learning disability associated with their autism, may not have any functional verbal speech, may have serious cognitive impairment, may have challenging behaviour, all the way through to people with high functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome who won't have any cognitive or learning disability, but will still have a challenge with social and communication and social interaction, and also the environment and the sensory challenges that the environment can offer. What do we want to do at Priors Court? We feel that it is really important that all people with autism have the right to lead a fulfilling life and be as independent as possible, and be able to give back to society and contribute to society in a way that makes sense to them. Here at Priors Court, we work with those that are most severely affected by their autism have an associated learning disability, and also have challenging behaviour. So here at Prize Court, we are an internationally recognised charity, and we support people with autism from the ages of 5 to 25. We've been open for 21 years, and we set out to transform the future for people with complex autism. We started 21 years ago with 2 children and 28 staff. We've now grown to 90 young people and nearly 600 staff. We're lucky enough to be based on a campus site, and we have a school, 16 residential homes, 2 indoor gyms, a swimming pool, a horticulture centre, a vocational skills centre, a countryside living and learning centre with farm animals. We have a full therapeutic MDT team, and we have a host of resources at our fingertips. And we've been also lucky enough to be able to either renovate or build from new a number of different buildings to help support young people with autism. Now, our young people are those most challenged by their autism. They will have an associated learning disability, they will have little or no verbal communication, and very often diagnosed with a coexisting condition such as epilepsy, mental health disorder, etc. It's important to understand that these are the most affected people by their autism, because we've had to create environments that support that. So our young people will have a very high level of anxiety and a very high level of challenging behaviour. And challenging behaviour can take many forms, but they will either be aggressive towards themselves, to others, or indeed to the environment around them. And very often when this happens, living at home can no longer be an option for many of our young people. Our families are very involved with their children, and they spend time at Prize Court, and our children spend time in their family homes. But to live and learn, these young people need a specially adapted environment, and that is what we provide. We also obviously provide specialist staff trained in our prior approach methodology and the special environment. And those two things combined allow young people to live and to learn and to grow and develop towards their adult life. So I'd like to just move on now to our residential buildings. As I said, we support 90 young people across 16 home environments, and we've learned an awful lot. We've been able to build from new, we've been able to renovate, we have learned what does work and conversely what doesn't work when trying to design the best buildings for people with autism to live in. I'd like to talk to you about the Seasons. This was a building that we designed back in 2010 and then redesigned in 2015. It was built between 2015 and 2017, and we opened it in 2017. It consists of 4 6-bedded homes, plus a social hub, a life skills laundry, an indoor gym, meeting rooms and offices for staff, and its own self-contained gardens, both front and rear. When we designed the Seasons, we wanted to understand everything that we had learnt previously in our almost 20 years up to that point, and trying to future-proof what we wanted for this building going forward. So it was really important to represent the end user all the way through the design process. We talked to staff, we talked to young people in a way that they would understand and could contribute to. And throughout the whole of the design and redesign process, I represented the end user. We argued long into the night about what would and wouldn't work for people with autism, And we've really got down to absolutely every fine detail to try and design support into this building. But the brief was always going to be that it must be a homely environment. It mustn't be institutionalised. It must be somewhere people wanted to live and to work and to feel at home and comfortable in. So some of the challenges that we wanted to address. Young people with autism are very visual learners, and if you can't understand what people are saying to you, or you can't understand the written word, what you can understand is what you see in front of you. So what we designed into these buildings was a colour theme that ran throughout the whole of each of the buildings. So you can see there's 4 homes there. They are spring, summer, autumn and winter. And each of those different homes of the seasons had a different colour running through. So you can just see to the right of the picture there is a blue pathway, and that represented Winter House. And Winter House has a blue theme running throughout. So it's carpeting, it's soft furnishing, some of the accent walls in the kitchens and the bathrooms all have a blue theme running throughout. So a young person who perhaps might not know where they're going or might get lost in a thought process and need a visual symbol to recognise would always be able to recognise that blue path, the blue front door, go in, and I'm in the right environment because of the colour suggests that I'm in the right environment. It's a subtle thing, it's a low-level thing, but something that we found really supports our young people to understand where they are. As I said before, one of the main challenges of autism is social interaction and also managing sensitivity to the environment. So when we looked at designing the social spaces, the lounges, the kitchens, the dining rooms of these homes, we wanted to make them very functional and supportive of autism. So what you can see in the ceiling of the lounge here in Summer House is that you can see the perforated ceiling, and behind that we have 45 mils of sound absorbing material. So this really was very important. One of the things we learnt from other homes is that if one young person is distressed, their noise can also then set off distress and challenge in other young people. What we did with this sound absorbing material here was we wanted to make sure that if a young person was distressed within this room, that noise wouldn't then bleed out to the rest of the home, and vice versa. If somebody was distressed outside of that room, it wouldn't affect those young people who might be watching the telly or listening to music within that room. And that's proved very, very successful. Also, you'll notice the lighting. Now, a couple of things about the lighting. It can be adjusted up and down so that we can have a low level of lighting or a brighter level of lighting, but also that it's very flush to the ceiling. When young people are very distressed, they can often attack their environment, and anything that is loose, that is hanging, that is freestanding, that is dangling will be and can be pulled down. So in setting those lights, these LED lights flush to the ceiling and fully covered, it meant that there was nothing really to pull down. Now, obviously you can see that the smoke detector there is protruding from the ceiling, but that's about it. And we've again found that the lack of damage to these environments has really been key. We've really seen not a huge amount of maintenance and repair needing to go on because we tried to design that into the building. Obviously, you can also see there's no radiators, so we wanted to have nothing that could be pulled off the wall, cause water damage, cause a young person to be injured in any way. So we've gone for underfloor heating. Every downstairs room that young people engage in the social space also has a door to the outside. So the lounge has a door to the garden, and it means that if a young person is feeling anxious or distressed, they can get out of that environment quickly and safely and be able to access space and time to calm. The more we give young people an ability to self-regulate by giving them space and time, the less we have to physically intervene to keep them safe. You can also see that the width of the doors in these environments is different. They are 1.5 times wider, and they are made of a solid construction. So they're not hollow filled doors, they're solid doors, and they're 1.5 times that wide, because if we need to help a young person through the door, we can walk with them to be able to get in or out of the room. You can see curtains hanging. We wanted to make sure that we had soft furnishings in the room, but they're on a quick pop curtain rail, which means that if they do get pulled down, they can immediately be put back up within a minute or two, and you keep the homeliness and the environment looking clean, looking nice. You can also see on the wall that we've encased the TV in a tough furniture cabinet, and again, this is about making the environment comfortable and suitable. Now, this was a picture taken just as we opened this house, so it doesn't quite have the stamp that it now has, and young people have used this room and environment. There's some artwork on the walls, there's toys and books and bits and pieces all around, and it's a much homelier environment. So another of the areas that we needed to address within the challenges of autism is young people finding certain things very highly motivating, and water is one of those things that causes a lot of interest and, dare I say the word, a lot of obsession with a lot of our young people. So we have, over the 21 years, we have had many floods. We have had blocked toilets, we have had blocked drains, we have had overrunning water, and obviously the impact of this is huge, because it not only impacts the young person, but it impacts the whole house. You might have water damage, you might have water coming through the ceiling, it would impact electrics, etc., and young people would have to move out of their home. So we don't want that. So how do we address that? Well, one of the main things that you can see in this room is when we started to design it, it had a small circular drain hole in the wet room, in the ensuite wet room. What we replaced that with was this extra long, large drain that had the floor is obviously gently recessed so that everything drains down. So it's virtually impossible to flood these rooms. And I have to say, in the 3 years the seasons have been open, we have never had a flood, which is testament to the way that drainage works. It's a small change, it's a simple change, but it has had a very significant impact. The other thing that we did with water is we put controls outside of the room in a very discreet cupboard so that we could shut off water to those en suites. So if a young person really was challenging their environment and challenging that water flow, we could stop the water at source so that it didn't flood or cause any more damage. Now, the bathroom you can see here, we designed these rooms, and there's 1 or 2 in each of the homes of the seasons that is a more robust ensuite. So you'll see that there isn't a toilet seat. That toilet seat is moulded into, it's all one piece into the toilet basin, and that the sink doesn't have taps, it has motion control on and off water flows, and that's also the same for the shower. Now, again, not institutionalised, not in every room, but for those young people that really, when they do get distressed or anxious, start pulling the toilet seats off or pulling their taps off, it's really important that we protect their environment. And if they can't do that, they won't do that. And we see, again, a complete reduction in the amount of damage caused in some of these bedrooms. Other things to point out are things like privacy and dignity. Now, obviously, you can see that there's curtains up at the room, but also there's integrated blinds built in to the double glazing units. Now, these can be controlled from inside and outside of the room. So if a young person doesn't yet have the concept of privacy and dignity, from outside of the room, the staff can close the blinds, ensuring that young people are their privacy and dignity is respected at all times. Within these bedrooms, we also designed in a fully fitted wardrobe and chest of drawers, and storage units for young people so that they could have all of their belongings in one place. When an environment is too busy or too messy, then young people with autism can find that very challenging. So being able to pack everything away, close those doors off, and also, again, it can be really distressing for a young person if they are very anxious and they damage their own property, and then when they're calmer, they're very upset that they've damaged their property. So if we can pop that away safely and securely until they calm down, it's a lot better for everybody. So minimising challenging behaviour in the building design was something that was an absolute key concept for us, and we wanted to check back that we actually had been successful in this aim of ours. So our challenge was the risk of harm from impact for young people damaging their environment as a result of their challenging behaviour or high levels of anxiety. Things that we built in were things like toughening the walls. So we not only used toughened blocks, but we also then skimmed the walls in an 18mm ply and then covered with plasterboard, or in the case of bathrooms, the white rock style material. This had a massive impact actually, because in normal wall construction, if a young person is challenged or upset, they might throw something and, if the plasterboard's gone, then you go straight through that wall. With this case, with the 18mm ply, skimming that, it really just did lead to a dent in the wall, or a small dent that our maintenance team were able to fix quickly. And it just had such a lessening of impact for our young people. Our doors, made of solid wood and twice as thick as standard, but also 1.5 times as wide, so that we could help and assist somebody get in or out of a room, being side by side rather than in front or behind them. Every room where the young people were had a door to the outside, so that we could enable young people to calm quickly in a low stress environment, so they could get outside, they could have time and space to calm. We removed the need to continually fix radiators or put big radiator covers over, by putting underfloor heating in and just doing away with the radiators full stop. As you can see from the picture, we used a different type of handle. They're a pinch handle rather than a traditional type of handle. And again, these really worked well. Many of our other buildings that have traditional type handles, we were constantly replacing or repairing them. These handles, they've been really robust, and we haven't had to replace or repair any of them. They're all still working really, really well. As I described before, we put windows with integrated blinds so that we could maintain young people's privacy and dignity. And we built in storage all around the homes and in the rooms, so that if a young person was feeling distressed or challenged in any way, we could put personal items away until they were calmer. Now, what did all of that lead to? Well, as you can see from the small graph, what we did is we wanted to prove beyond doubt that this was having an effect. So we tracked behaviour in a group of young people in 2016 prior to them moving into the seasons, and then in 2017 when they were actively living in the seasons. And we factored out all other potentials. We factored out changes in their medication or changes in their peer groups, or all of those sorts of things. And we just concentrated on behaviours in and around the environment. And what you can see in that graph is across the board, we had a 28% reduction in challenging behaviour, completely associated to the building and the environment itself. So beyond doubt, we have had a massive impact on these young people, and the environment and the building itself has had a massive impact. And those gains have continued throughout their time here. So those lessons of behaviour continued for the last 2 or 3 years. Just wanted to quickly show you the building layout here. This is the whole of the ground floor, so you can see the 4 homes. They're denoted as units 1 to 4. And then you can also see we have a separate entrance for our hub area, which has a social room, a life skills laundry, and an indoor gym, and then bicycle storage and some plant areas as well. And if we look more closely, so here we see one of the home's ground floor layout. Aspects to point out here was that the lounge, kitchen and dining room all have doors to the outside space, front or rear gardens. The corridors you'll see in terms of the width are much wider than normal corridors, and that's because, again, if we need to help somebody in or out of the environment, you want to be able to do that calmly side by side rather than being in front or behind. One of the key changes here that we've made in the redesign was these originally were designed with small sort of sensory rooms in the downstairs area, but we listened to the staff who really advocated for the young people to have a separate medications room. Now, I know that's not something that you would normally have in an everyday house, but previous to this, we had medication storage in the staff office. But a lot of our staff suggested that that wasn't as safe or as useful as it could be. So what we did is design meds rooms. So we designed them to be bespokely built. We had antimicrobial floors and furniture, and each one had its own medication design cabinet, so everything could be safely stored, as well as meds fridges and areas where the recording and reporting of medication could be done in a very safe environment. And again, the impact of doing that is that across all of the Four Seasons homes, we have seen a decrease in medication errors from the other homes across site. So those homes are safer, and as a result of this, we have retrofitted in medication rooms in all of our other homes. So we have not only learnt that it works, but we have implemented it across other environments as well. So briefly just touching on recognition for the building, in 2018 we won the Judges Special Award from the British Construction Industry Awards, and they wanted to highlight that the astonishing impact, as you can see from the quote, that design and the environment can have on challenging behaviour. We also, in the same year, had Ofsted praise the building and say that it really did raise the bar for accommodation for young people with autism spectrum disorder and created an outstanding environment. So just very briefly, I want to touch on the Health and Wellbeing Hub before we go. This is a very new facility for us. This was a renovation project that has literally only been open a couple of weeks. And the need for this was very clear. There was some research a couple of years ago that suggested that people with autism have a 10-year less life expectancy than those without autism. And that's factoring out all other potential impactors on life expectancy. So other health conditions, age, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background. When all of those are factored out, just because somebody has autism, they're going to live 10 years less. And that is a shocking statistic. So why might that be? Well, one of the main factors that research found, it was accessing health environments or clinical environments can be incredibly challenging for people with autism. They might not be able to understand that they're in pain or that their body might be changing or something's happening that doesn't feel right. But certainly, even if they do, accessing a dentist or a hospital or a doctor's surgery can be very overwhelming. The sights, the sounds, the busyness, the smells, all of those sorts of things can really overwhelm a person with autism, and it's too much of a sensory onslaught to be able to access that health or clinical environment. So we wanted to create an environment where we could practice, hence our Health and Wellbeing Hub. What you can see there in the picture is our new treatment room. It has a working dentist chair, it has a treatment examination bed, it has the ability to do things like take bloods, blood pressure, eye examinations, all of those sorts of things. And what it's designed to do is designed to replicate those environments so that we can practice. Our nurses, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and speech and language therapists have all got together and written desensitisation programs, which will take young people from simply coming in and sitting in that dentist chair and having it move up and down, all the way through to going to the dentist in the community and having a procedure done. So it's a long-term plan, but we know that if we can desensitise and get young people over their fears and anxieties around medical involvement, then they will have a better life and a longer life. So it's incredibly important that we get this up and running as soon as possible and work with all of our young people to be able to access clinical environments. Also in this building, we built in 2 therapy engagement rooms, which have the ability to very neutrally decorated, but then what we've done is create colour changing lights so that you can go through the whole spectrum of colour, and inbuilt sounds so that we can play different musics, different sounds for young people with autism. So dependent on what we want to do in those therapy engagement rooms, dependent on the therapeutic discipline, and depending on if the young person is hypo or hypersensitive, or if they're aroused, over-aroused or under-aroused, we can change those things up. So if a young person is highly aroused and highly anxious, we can put some calming music on, we can put some calming colours through that room, and we can start to calm them and engage them. Alternatively, if a young person is very hard to reach and they seem to be quite closed off, we can put some brighter lights on, some brighter colours on, some brighter music on to try and engage them and to pick that engagement up. I look forward to perhaps coming back and talking to you about this in the future, because as I say, it's only just finished as a building, and we will be tracking, as we did with the seasons, we'll be tracking some really key lines to understand what impact this building is making on the lives of our young people with autism. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening. If you have any further questions, or you would, post-COVID, like to come and visit Priors Court, then my contact details are on the screen and we can arrange that potentially. And I hope you've learned a little bit about autism and a little bit about putting the autism into buildings to make the world a better place for every young person with autism. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.